episode 37 of Destination Talk. I'm John Paz.
And I am Harry, and we are coming to you once again from Chop Studios, located at 750 Route 34 in Matawan, New Jersey. And today our guest is Katie Mathews. And for this very special episode, by the time this episode airs, which if all goes well will be 2 days after the date, it'll be our anniversary episode. Because Destination Talk launched on November 14th last year. Mm-hmm. So if all goes well, this episode will be dropping 2 days after that. So this has become the first anniversary episode of Destination Talk, episode 37. So Katie, thank you for coming in studio. Pleasure to have you. How's everything going?
Everything's going great over here. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate you bringing me into the studio.
No, we're happy to have you. I kind of got a little surprised when you reached out because originally when we had planned you for the first time, it was going to be remote. So I was thinking that, but then when you surprised me last night, I was like, that's great because we enjoy having guests in studio. It makes it a lot easier for us.
Yeah, I was really excited about coming in studio. I know first we had originally planned for the virtual, but I was like, you know what? Let me just get in there.
No, we appreciate it. It does make it a little easier. Mm-hmm. So little background. So we first met last year in May when you had come into my training facility and you were hosting a panel, and I believe I was one of 5 guests that particular day. And then it subsequently led into training your son.
Yep, that's right.
And then I was also on your podcast, The Mother Drive.
That's right.
And then we kind of have worked on a small project that's been on hold, but that's how these things go.
That is.
With Basecamp For Life. So we're going to kind of touch on all of these things here today, but that's how we met. John's meeting you for the first time, although he has met your husband. Mm-hmm. So we did meet with your husband at one time when we were discussing the podcast with him to get his ideas. So for our audience that doesn't know that much about you, can you just tell us a little bit about who you are, your background, and some of the things that you're involved with?
Yeah, sure. So, where do we start? So my journey with mindfulness started when I was super young. So when I was about 2.5. I had 2 internal hemorrhages when I was quite young, and I was a little bit of a medical mystery, so to speak. So by the age of 12, I had a life-saving surgery. During that time, I was using a lot of mindful tools to sort of help me through that. My mom started me out with visualization. When I was about 3, she would tell me these stories to, calm my nervous system. And I carried those stories with me through life. And funnily enough, I actually use them on my own kids today because I have a daughter who's 4 also, aside from my son who's 12, who Harry has coached.
Yes, very good kid, by the way.
Yeah, so it's always been a part of my life. So it's been a really strong part of my life. And then as I became a young athlete, these skills were really just drag and drop into athletics, persevering through limitations, pain, a lot of the normal sort of things that you encounter when you are training, discomfort, right? Mm-hmm. And also just nervousness before competitions and just trying to make sure that you stay regulated as an athlete. And so all of these skill sets sort of just came along with me, and I competitively rode. I rode at nationals in Canada. So, these skills just carried me through my life, and particularly were useful in athletics.
Mm-hmm. Can you talk a little bit about what Basecamp For Life is?
Yeah, sure. So Basecamp For Life, I started this, actually, so let me first rewind. Mm-hmm. So I launched this podcast called The Mother Drive, which Harry just touched on. So this podcast was focused on having conversations that were uplifting and supportive for parents. I noticed as my son was aging that parents were really, really struggling in athletics specifically, among other things. Mm-hmm. And so I was like, what can I do to help? How can I support? So started having conversations surrounding how can you support your young athlete as a trainer? And Harry came on and had a great, wonderful conversation with us about that. Then we also had the panel, which was talking about youth sports holistically. And so the Mother Drive was the driver behind that event. And as time progressed, I was like, oh, this is really deep. And this is across education, and this is across athletics, and this is across life, work, organizations. It's really so important. And so I thought, oh, I need to make like systemic change. And so for that reason, I started Basecamp for Life. I pivoted off the Mother Drive and thought, okay, how can I really help deeply and make great change and impact at scale?
So we've had athletes on here talking about their journeys and giving messages out to families and kids. We've had coaches doing the same thing. And why I was very excited about having you in as a guest on the podcast was that we haven't really had like a parent's perspective. You have, as you mentioned, 2 kids, but your son being that middle school age. So, when you look at youth sports today, what's your opinion of it as a parent, just as a whole, starting from it?
So one of the things we talk about at Basecamp for Life is something called the mindful circle. And the mindful circle is really in athletics, through the lens of athletics. It is the trainers and coaches, the parents, and the young athlete. And so I think the biggest thing that I have noticed in youth sports and youth athletics on my come up with my son is that system is quite fractured. It's very disconnected, and there needs to be some healing there. And I think that parents, as a parent myself, I can't speak for all parents,
right,
but as a parent myself, I can say that there's no guidebook, there's no manual. And I think what really needs to happen is that parents who are going to enroll their children in youth programs need to do a workshop. They need to, right out of the gate, educate themselves on how to parent a youth athlete. You need systems to support you through conversations that really make or break a child's, well-being holistically. And how do you help them develop and grow as a youth athlete while sustaining that joy and that, the reason they got into playing that sport to begin with, right? So I think that that's the biggest thing that I'm seeing as a parent is that there just really needs to be more education among parents. Also, everybody else can use some education as well, but particularly parents.
Well, I know in the 15 years that I've been involved in youth performance training, I have seen a huge change. And, whether it's, and this, my favorite topic here is NIL deals and just, and the pressure. Social media has certainly grown exponentially in the last 15 years. And it's scary. But, I also say too, I'm co-own a business that depends on these kids coming in. So it's a fine line that I walk, but I go back to what Coach Liddell had said to us. He's a hockey coach that we had on a previous episode, and he was like, listen, there are sometimes he has to tell families you need to take 3-4 weeks off and not come in and train, because that will hopefully lead you back to wanting to be here.
So you're hitting something there that's so important. And this is the biggest reason why I have brought up why parents need education. Because parents need to help their child develop an awareness of their needs.
Right.
Because right now what's happening in youth athletics is children are just reacting. They're just reacting to what their parents are telling them to do and the schedules that's been given to them. And they are just showing up, and they're not even aware that their body is burnt out sometimes, or that they are overscheduled, and that there's suddenly just this pressure, and they don't even know how to communicate that to their parents in most cases. So as a parent, you have to learn the guardrails, and you have to learn the flags, and help your child be able to say, hey, this is too much, before we're managing crisis, And it's like the prevention versus the putting out the fire,
When do you see that like fine line between I feel like a lot of parents sometimes try to be the coach too. When do you see oh, this is for the coach to, make that decision, or when, this is, the parents' time to make the decision when it comes to in sports athletics?
So it's interesting that you say that. I think parents, this is another reason why parents need education, is because they will often just walk that line as the coach and try to tell their kids, hey, this is what you should be doing on the field, and this is what you should be, this is the behavior, and oh, you missed this, and oh, you didn't do that right. And the thing is that the differentiator is like parents need to be mindful that they are starting to do that. And the kid also needs to, when they develop, that awareness, be able to say, hey, it's boundary here. You're not the coach. That's not what my coach said to do.
Yeah.
And so there's this communication that happens between parent and child. And parents, your biggest role is really to support your child from the angle of curiosity and growth and asking questions about how something made them feel, how did that game feel, but when prompted, not, because you want to project what your perceptions were throughout that game. Or if your kid, as you get older, and if you are a parent that participated in that sport your whole life, because you get a lot of parents, they were young athletes themselves. They have a lot of knowledge that they want to share, and they want to overstep. And so I think that can be something that also comes through a parent workshop. The parents are developing an awareness of differentiating what is their role.
Yeah, I also think it's like trusting the coach too. As a coach, as a new coach, I mean, I'm just kind of getting into the world of, coaching wrestling at my club and TCNJ, but being able to trust us because we've been doing this a very long time.
Correct.
I mean, it's kind of finding that right coach because there's a lot of coaches out there that don't know what they're doing sometimes.
Yeah.
But majority of the time when you find a coach like Harry or, coach like Donnie at Yale Street.
And soon to be you.
Yes. But like having trust in that coach and having, a way to sit back. Donnie even touched about this in our last episode. Kind of just having parents sit back and, let the coaches coach and do what they're, good at, right?
Right. That's right. That's what I'm saying. It's like it's not your job.
Correct.
Your job is to support and allow them to develop that awareness themselves so that they can even engage in conversations with their coach and say, hey, coach, I don't feel good when I do this. Like, tell me what to do about that, Yeah.
And listening to you talk now kind of made me think of something that I believe was a question you had asked me on the panel is we touched on that car ride home concept. So would you like to dive into that a little bit?
Sure. So the car ride home, that is probably one of the most challenging places for youth athletes is that car ride home because they are stuck in a car with their parent who just watched the game, and that parent is pouring out all of their opinions. And sometimes it's encouragement and sometimes it's not. But the bottom line is that kid does not need to replay that game in the car ride home, whether it was good or bad. And what has been shown in studies is that these kinds of interactions over time, the child starts to get their own self-worth wrapped up in these conversations. And the car ride home is a very specific place where those kind of conversations happen. And we as parents have to really try hard not to be projecting things onto our children about the way that they played or leaning into that. The child should really just be able to say, okay, I played that game. Now I'm going to leave it there. And I'm going to continue on this car ride home. And when I get home, I'm going to go out with my friends. I'm going to play. I'm going to do whatever I want to do. And then if they're reflecting at some point later and they say, hey, Dad, or hey, Mom, what did you think of that pass? Or what did you think of this thing that happened in the game earlier? Excuse me. And they've invited you to have a conversation with them. It's the invitation. The child should be inviting you to have that conversation.
I know when you brought that question up to me, that really hit home because I had my dad. Listen, I loved my dad. My dad loved me, and I've come to learn that he was doing what he thought was the right thing at that time.
Yeah.
But as a baseball player, I could have gone 3 for 4, but he'd harp on the one at bat that I didn't get a hit. I could have thrown a one-hit shutout, and it was, yeah, but on that pitch you gave up the hit to, it's hard to be perfect in sports.
It's all negative.
You know,
Yeah.
so I would sit there and say, but I struck out 15 guys and only gave up one hit, or I went 3 for 4 with 4 or 5 RBIs. Why are we talking about the one negative or the one thing that didn't stand out?
Correct. Yeah.
And that was, you know, and it was challenging for me, and I understand it was a different era. I can only imagine what it's like today, because now it's magnified 10, 20, maybe even 50 more times than then, because everyone's posting their successes on social media, and if you're not keeping up with them, it's almost like you're not doing well enough.
Yeah, that's right. That's absolutely right.
And it's a very dangerous path that I think we're going on, and I see it as my role, and I think you as well, because you're encountering now with younger kids okay, we have a job to do, but we also have a job to help educate these kids and to make our training environments challenging yet fun, and let them know, hey, it's okay if you make a mistake.
That's right.
That's why you're here. Because if you were perfect, you wouldn't need to see me.
That's right. And to just talk a little bit about that, like, coaches have a way that they deliver things, right, to children, because they've been trained. I'm not saying all coaches, right? And also there's different seasons. There's different ways to deliver things for different age demographics. But I'm seeing that, you know, kids, there's a comparison game happening. They're comparing themselves. Social media aside, they are out there comparing themselves, because the conversations that are happening in their life are people comparing them to their teammates, right? And with your dad, right, on the way home, like you said, he was just doing what he knew best at the time. Right. But had he been educated otherwise, those conversations probably would have gone very differently. My father, in the car ride home with my father from sports, my dad, boy, he was just an anomaly, I think. Like, he really was. He was so supportive, and he always left it to me to ask for help or advice or feedback. He never brought up, you missed that shot, you did this, so yeah, you know, you need to do this more. Never. Not once. And I played every sport. And when I played a sport, I played really competitively. And my dad coached hockey. He ran a hockey school for years for my 2 older brothers. So I think he just had that knack. By that point, I was the 4th kid. So I think he just had that knack to know, like,
a little bit of practice by then.
A little bit of practice by then. This isn't going anywhere quickly if I start being hasty and focusing on the negative.
Yeah. I feel like another thing too, as you guys are having this conversation, my grandpa used to take me to judo practice, and we would either go get sushi after practice, or we would go to the Clark White Diamond, get a burger, like little things like that. And, you know, as a young kid, like, you know, oh, I'm going to practice, if I do real great, and then, you know, we're going for this later.
That's right.
Kind of, you know, using those things to build, you know, a young athlete too. Can help.
Oh, of course.
So that's like, kids are like, yeah, I get to spend time with my parent now, because it's exciting to get their attention and to, like, also get that burger, like that, which is like not something you get all the time, right? It's like a little reward, a little nice little, you know?
Yeah. So for many parents, the pressure is always increasing, right? Travel teams, club sports, early specialization. What point do you believe sports become too much for a middle school athlete or a young athlete?
So, when we talk about middle school athletes, I think the very first thing that we should be working on is identity beyond sports, outside of sports. Who are you outside of this, as a, you know, before you're an athlete? What do you like to do for fun? What brings you joy outside of this sport, right? Because the thing is like, anything can happen, and you want your child to have some sort of identity that is deeper than their love of said sport, right? Because God forbid they get an injury, or, you know, they just tire of that sport. Then they sort of have this moment that's of crisis. Well, the only reason I felt good about myself was because I played this sport and I played it well. So it's really identity first. I think that's what needs to be focused on for youth athletes before we even engage in a conversation about pressure. But unfortunately, what is happening is that, the things are too much right now for youth athletes. All of the travel teams committed in multiple, different sports. And trying to specialize, honestly, in multiple different sports. There are children who are trying to specialize in multiple different sports to see which one will be the actual area of focus so they can drive to D1 or whatever, whatever their plan is, okay? And that's great. It's fine to have a plan, but you need to know who you are outside of these things. And I think that pressure is very premature in middle school and youth sports. And we need to just be mindful of fun and keeping our kids' self active. And because those are not actually things that you can go without. They are necessities. Children need social play and engagement in order to develop and grow as human beings that are thriving later. You can't just hyper-focus on a sport and then, okay, great, you don't know how to have a conversation with someone outside of the lens of sports.
Right.
So it's really important.
And when we first met, that was sort of the conversation that we were starting to have, because at the time your son was, and he still is, playing basketball.
Yep.
But I believe he was playing soccer as well.
Correct.
Flag football. And then there was this discussion because Coach Poe was on that panel as well. And, and he and I were sitting next to each other that day. And, we were discussing about also where do you find time to train?
Yeah,
and
right.
So, and I know that was a big conversation that we were having. So how did you navigate those waters with your son at that time with, those four elements happening?
So we did a lot of exploration with sports with my son. And he tried many things. And because we were also trying to be okay, what do you really like?
Right.
What do you really want to do? Spend time playing. And we realized over time, what was so interesting about my son is he was an excellent soccer player naturally, but he didn't love soccer. And it was like a fight every time we had to, because once you enroll for the season, as a parent, you're and it's thousands of dollars that you've invested. And this child is well, this is not, I don't want to do this. And so, okay, we're going to finish out the season. That's fine. We'll go when we can, when our energy level allows for this. We'll have, because, when you're playing that many things at once and you're exploring that many things at once, you only have this much battery. So you have to figure out where you're going to, and it's okay some days to just not go, right? And so, but that was something we had to work through as a family. And so eventually he decided not to play soccer. That was not for him, even though he was excellent. He could have probably done very well long term. But that wasn't what he loved to do. So we got rid of that. And flag football, he played. It was fun. It was just something that he did without feeling any kind of, pressure or real investment. Right. And so then he decided not to play, football after, which is fine. He didn't like it, right? So there was a process of learning what did he like and what did he want to put his time into. And, honestly, at the end of, I think it was over the summer no, it was before then. It was last winter, I want to say, that we decided okay, we're just going to play basketball because that's what we like to do. And we are much more flexible about how much time he spends playing basketball. There's no real expectation there, except for, okay, you got to go to your games, right? And just have fun. And the minute that he stops having fun, it's over. It's we don't need to do things that do not bring us joy anymore and, cause too much pressure, or we put pressure on ourselves and things like that. We try to have a very open conversation about that in our household now, but that's been a journey,
And I also know he enjoys fishing and playing golf, so that's definitely freed up some time for him to do those two
Okay,
things.
yeah, that's the other thing. My son recently developed, like about 3 years ago, he developed this fishing. Like he's obsessed now.
Right.
All he wants to do is fish. So,
He would tell me those stories.
so that's really where he finds joy now. So we said, okay, fishing, golf, basketball.
But if you think about it, if you guys were the type of parents that continued to push, and he was still doing soccer and or the flag football, he would have no time to explore and find that enjoyment of fishing or golf or what have you. So I think there's something that needs to be said for that too. I think parents, not all, but most, they don't listen to their children.
Oh, they don't.
Right?
No.
So because, you're not old enough, one day you'll understand, and we create this, those are things I used to hear.
Yeah.
We create this culture that says, okay, I have no voice, but what you guys have done is you've given your son, and I know you will ultimately your daughter as well, a voice. You've heard them, and now you're making decisions together, and I think that's something that's very important.
I think that's right. I think that's been a journey. I think agency for children is absolutely critical. They need to have a voice. They need to be able to say it, or they push it down inside. But they also need to first develop the awareness of that voice, because that's also a lot of the problem with kids today is that they're like, something doesn't feel right. What is that?
Right.
I feel tired. I really am angry about having to go here. But I know mom and dad paid a lot of money.
Right.
My parents expect that of me. I'm not going to be good enough as their son or daughter if I decide I don't want to do this anymore. So there's just but they need to develop the awareness that hey, let's have open conversations about this. You don't like this anymore. You don't find joy in it. It's off the table.
Right.
This sport is not you. But children are already enmeshed and raveled up in the identity of their sport by the time they are 12 years old at this point.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I think, too, the question you had asked about the pressures, that they also feel that pressure, too, because there might be some parents saying to the kids, well, I paid this amount of money, but then if they don't show up, they don't have a spot on the team.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of factors that are going into this pot. And I think that's where you have a lot of resentment. And I mean, when I got certified to do sports performance training, which I'm dating myself here, goes back to 2011 at this point.
Yeah.
At that point, the stat was the numbers were immensely high that kids were dropping out of sports at 13 years old. And that was
burnt.
And this was, we're talking about 2011, 2025 on the verge of 2026. It's off the charts, and I can't imagine what it's like to be a kid today growing up in the world of sports.
It's an epidemic. It really truly
at this
is.
Point.
That's why I started Basecamp for Life, is because children need this system set up for them so that they have skill sets, so that they have an awareness, and they know this isn't good for me. And I'm going to communicate that to my parents.
Right.
And parents are much better at discerning this is what is okay to, I'm mindful and aware that my child seems to be not, joyful about this anymore.
Right.
And I'm mindful about how I'm approaching athletics with my kid. It should be joyful. It should be fun, an activity of exploration and curiosity and growth and development, not, I'm going to push them to do this because I, in my mind, need them to get a scholarship to get to college. And so I'm going to do whatever I have to do,
Speaking of Basecamp for Life, you talk about 4 pillars.
Yeah.
Mindset, movement, nutrition, and rest.
Yeah.
How do you integrate these into a young athlete's life?
So through the lens of mindfulness, it's really, when we think about nutrition, it's helping the athlete be mindful of what food fuels them and feels good for them to eat. I once heard a basketball trainer speak about food and how he had this aha moment in college where he would, go out with the boys or whatever. They'd eat a bunch of pasta because they thought, oh, let me carb load, right? And then he would go and he would play his games for like the next couple of days, and he was feeling terrible. So one day he was like, you know what, let me just try some grilled chicken and some vegetables. Tried the grilled chicken and vegetables, showed up better than he ever showed up, and was like, oh, that's what works for me. Meanwhile, some other guys, it's pasta. It's just everybody's body is different, and things feel different in the body. So developing that mindfulness about what feels good for you to eat. And having the child, let them go eat the McDonald's before the game and then feel crappy. Let them experience that so that they know, like, oh, maybe I need to not do that before a game, Let them figure it out. You can't always fix it for them or tell them what to do. So that's when I think about nutrition. That's really the idea, is what works for your body, and developing a mindfulness surrounding that. Obviously, you can be put in touch with nutritionists and people who are experts through Basecamp For Life as well. So that's an option. But when I think about that, that's when I'm talking about nutrition. In terms of the other pillars, the movement is like what feels good for movement for your body. When are you pushing it too hard, right? Movement is absolutely critical in order to maintain holistic well-being. You have to move your body. We're humans. That's what we're designed to do, move. And then the mindset is really the awareness piece, right? Knowing, when you have negative thought patterns, and what does that look like for you? When you are feeling like you're not enough, and all of those things, and recognizing those things, and getting the guidance systems to work on those things, right? Whether that's a sports psychologist, if you're a young athlete looking for help specifically through the lens of sports, and also just rewording your dialogue in those areas. And as far as the rest piece goes, rest is probably the biggest. Rest and recharge are probably the biggest things, because they're undervalued, right? Kids just don't get enough rest. They're constantly going. Their schedules are super packed, and the time is always accounted for. So what is the time where they are actually just doing nothing? And then,
well, that's a challenge too, because even when they're doing nothing, they've got a tablet or a phone in front of their face, and they don't realize what that's doing to them also.
They don't. Yes, that's correct. So like, what is the time they're actually doing nothing, and their body is actually resting? How much sleep are you getting in the night? Are you hydrating? Like, that's recharging.
Sleep is very important. I used to train 3 times a day. Sometimes,
Well, listening to Katie talk, I couldn't help but think about you, because all of those pillars, especially for someone in your sport, and it's across the board for all athletes, but as a wrestler, having to be conscious of your weight all the time, you had to know when to eat, when not to eat, when to push yourself, and what to do. And I have to imagine something like that was always on your radar all the time.
Yeah, in high school, I had a nutritionist. His name was Jerry, and he helped me out tremendously. I met him through Donnie D. Flippis, actually. And then in college, we had our own nutritionist as well, and they really emphasized sleep, getting up in the morning and moving, morning cardio. I did that all the time through high school, and, being able to have a good structure. But this is, again, high school, college. I feel like as a youth athlete, it's a little bit different.
Yeah, youth athletics is a little different.
Correct. But I go back to what you said. This is where the parents need to be educated, because how many matches did I go to see of you, and after every one of those matches, there was someone handing you guys a shake or something, and I used to say to yourself, "What is that?" And it was some type of a post-match. I mean, you guys would go for 7 straight minutes. I mean, you guys were soaking wet in sweat. You probably dropped 5 or 6 pounds in those 7 minutes, which is unconscionable for most of us to think. We probably like that personally, but these guys would do that. But right away, like I would see, they're jumping on the bike, they're being given a shake, and I mean, obviously, I know what your training regimen was, but a lot of people don't understand what it entails.
Yeah, sleep and just constant rest when you're not training and stuff like that.
It was like that for me for rowing too.
Always. It's something that is non-negotiable.
Yeah, absolutely. It really is. The nutrition piece, like we were guided by a nutritionist as well. There was a whole plan. You eat on this day. This is in partnership with your training. This is what you're eating,
Right.
because this is what your output needs to be. And, all of that stuff. And this is when you're running. And this is when you're, you need to make sure you're sleeping because this many hours. It was everything.
Yeah. I have a question. So we talk about this structure, everything. You're eating at this time, you're working out this time. How do you keep it fun while being part of a structure? Just kind of your input on that, because I'm curious.
So that's really, it's funny that you bring that up. So that's where this team idea sort of comes into place, where it's just like your teammates become your family because they are going through what you're going through.
Correct.
And they're on the schedule. So it's like your other friends that are not, doing this, there's a type of bond that you have with your teammates because, you're going through this together, or at least there was for me. Like there was literally the exact same regimen because I would have, 3 other people in a boat with me if I was rowing on a 4, or even 6 other people if I'm rowing in an 8. And so those people are in your, in your program, and you are just blood, sweat, and tears together for months and months and months, training for whatever competition you're going into. And so there's this bond that builds. So you keep things fun. You do activities together actually outside of the training itself. Like you're going to a movie, you're going to this person's house because, it's kind of like you could all only eat the same thing. So if you're going out here and these people are doing this, then it's like everybody's eating McDonald's around you, and that's no fun.
Yeah. I think the word I was looking for there was keeping it fresh while having that structure. That was the word I was looking for,
But there is an amount of keeping it fresh as well. But there is something to be said for team bonding, one. But also if you, with your friends that are not doing what you're doing, it's also nice to just separate yourself from whatever you're training for as well.
Shifting slightly, but staying on topic, back in September, I believe you spoke at Udonis Haslam's event down in Florida. Can you speak a little bit about that experience and what that was all about?
So Udonis's event was about the athletic mindset, okay? So when we think about athletes, they are professional athletes and, top tier college athletes, D1, that are really moving towards some sort of career potentially. Right. There's an athletic mindset. And, the athletic mindset can go in many different buckets, even outside of athletics, so to speak. But this particular conference is about supporting mental health through the lens of athletic mindset. So what is it? It's learning how to, connect with yourself and know what your needs are. And Udonis spoke a lot about, he spoke about failure at one point. And there was a point in his career where they thought he was going to be drafted, right? NBA draft night. And they thought he was going to be drafted, and his number never got called. And that was particularly difficult for him to accept, coming from where he came from. If you know anything about his background or upbringing, he came up in a very difficult set of circumstances, in a very challenged community, and so he persevered through all of those things, right? Only to then have trained all your life for something and not get picked up. So then he said, okay, pause, right? So athletic mindset, pause. I'm not going to react in this moment. I'm just going to allow myself this moment to feel my feelings and be angry and be upset about this for one day. And then the next day, he got on the phone and he decided, I'm going to Europe because I'm not going to back down. And when he went to Europe, this is so interesting, he stayed on America's time, even though he was in Europe. Because he did not want to bend. He wanted to be able to drag and drop himself right back into the U.S. and go to the NBA. And that's what happened to him. He got back. He came back to the U.S. He did what he needed to do. He trained. He poured himself into his training, came back, and made the NBA.
Had a pretty good career.
Had a pretty good career. And so but that takes athletic mindset, perseverance to not back down, to go, no, I'm going to go after my dreams and I'm going to still do this. And
listening to Katie say that, I couldn't help but go back to Sam Kamara.
Yep.
So Sam is someone I've had the pleasure of getting to know. He's been in the NFL now for 5 years. He went to a small school, Stony Brook University, went undrafted, played his rookie year with the Chicago Bears, and then he's been with the Cleveland Browns ever since. But he kept saying that one line, keep the main thing the main thing.
100%.
That's right.
And so I can't help but think about his journey in, different, but very similar when you're talking about professional athletes, because Sam went undrafted, Udonis went undrafted, but they had this different ability to flip a switch, so to speak, that was to not give up and to just say, this is what it is. I'm going to go out on my own terms. And if at the end of that it doesn't work, at least I know I did all I could.
It's really the using that, like, look, your circumstances are going to give you feedback, right? The things that happen to you are going to give you feedback, and it's what you do with the feedback, right? The athletic mindset is not to process that as failure. It's to use it as information and to say, I am going to use this to inform my next steps and like use it as challenge. Okay, you want to tell me that I can't do that? That's cool.
Right.
That's a challenge. Not I failed,
Right.
So you've given us so much framework and tools through this episode already. If you can give us 3 actionable tips to parents of competitive athletes, of youth athletes, how to balance, sport, childhood, what would they be?
So I think the first tip would be to parents, you educate yourselves. Educate yourselves. Go out, do a workshop on mindfulness. We offer plenty of them. Figure it out through the lens of athletics. Know how to show up for your kid, because your young athlete needs you. They need you to show up in the best version of yourself. And what was the next thing? Sorry.
It was three tips that you would give parents of young athletes about balancing sports in their childhood.
Yeah. So make sure that you protect your children's time. Their time to do nothing. That means no tablet, no phone, like just be here in reality, in the real world, right? In real life. Protect your children's time to do that. You are the parent. You need to say, this time is off the device. And I understand that children connect through devices a lot now and all of that stuff, but there does need to be off time. Protect your children's time for free play, being social, in-person engagement. And then the third one would be
I would think listening to the kids is important.
Yes, listening to your child, be curious.
Right.
Be curious, ask questions so that you can listen. Because children sometimes need prompting. They aren't always going to say, they don't always know. So be curious and ask questions about whether your child is having fun and how they feel. And ask them questions about their day-to-day as well. Be specific questions. Be curious about what's going on with your child.
It's funny you say it in those terms, because that's something I do with all the kids that come in to see me. And I've been doing it now for years, and it's like, how was school? How was that test you were telling me about? What are you doing this weekend? Because I've come to see that I'm not sure if they're being asked that enough. And by asking those questions, it's engaging them. And before they know it, we're 30 minutes into a workout, and they don't even know, oh, wait, we're almost done?
That's right.
Right. Because I actually am taking the time to have you tell me what's going on in your life. And that's why I said I don't think adults listen to the kids. Not all the time. I mean, we do need to still be adults when it comes at the end of the day. But letting them have a voice, I think, just only can help them.
Oh, boy. It really can. It can really help these kids.
Just letting them know they're heard.
Yeah.
Like their opinion matters, even if it's just, I can't stand this class I'm doing, or, my day it hasn't been great. Well, why? Tell me about it. If for nothing else, if I can't tell you, if I can't give you any actionable movements to fix it, at least I'm letting you talk about it.
That's right. Oftentimes we're not fixing your kids' problems is not the answer.
Right.
It's giving them the space to discuss their problems and asking them, well, what do you think you should do about that? And helping them find their own way forward. And sometimes that involves a lot of failure and a lot of hitting walls, but they need to learn how to fail forward, so to speak. But just more or less persevere through the uncomfortable, gain the feedback, and use it to, as intelligence to move forward and make better decisions next time.
Right.
And that's really it.
In closing, what's the future of Basecamp for Life looking like?
So right now, it's funny. You did have some questions initially that we had talked about, or you made some reference to technology and the digital world and how much it's impacting young athletes. So we actually are launching a digital conscious operating system through the lens of athletics. So it's going to be a course that young athletes and parents can take to understand how to integrate, technology, interact with technology in your life, and be mindful about that usage and understand how it impacts you and develop healthy boundary systems and those kinds of things.
Well, Katie, I want to thank you again for coming in and being a part of our anniversary episode, which my co-host wasn't even aware of, neither were you. I didn't want to put any undue pressure on anyone since the stakes were a tad higher. But I'm very happy that we were able to have this conversation because, as I said in the opening, we've had athletes and coaches talking about it, but we've yet to have that perspective from the parent because we're always asking questions of individuals to speak to the parents. But now we actually have a parent speaking to the parents. And I felt it was very important to have this conversation today. And we hope we help someone.
Yeah.
At the end of the day. And then one last thing. Where can people find you with regards to Basecamp for Life?
Yeah, absolutely. You can find me at basecampforlife.com. And you can also find me on Instagram at Basecamp for Life. I also have Basecamp for Life LinkedIn as well. So you can find me there. And I also write for Substack on all of these kinds of things.
We'll attach everything and tag it, below.
Perfect.
Yes. Well,
thank you so much for having me. It was wonderful. It's such a pleasure to speak with both of you.
No, I appreciate it. And, thank you again. We've built a relationship now over the last couple of years. So I'm happy to be a small part of your journey. And now you're involved in this journey as well. So we are very grateful for you taking time out of your day to be here. And with that being said, that is a wrap on episode 37, the anniversary episode of Destination Talk. Until we see you again.
Cut it.